I never thought I'd see him again. Not like this. Not while I was 8 months pregnant. Not in the middle of a gala with crystal chandeliers and champagne fountains and strangers dressed in elegance. But there he was. Daniel. The man who once promised to grow old with me. The man whose child I was carrying, without his knowledge. I had only taken a few steps into the grand hall of Westford University when I saw him across the room. He was standing beneath the massive 70th anniversary banner, casually sipping wine, laughing, with her. Lila. His new wife. She was draped on his arm like she belonged there, hair curled to perfection, red dress shimmering under the soft gold lighting. He wore that same charming half-smile, the one I used to think was only for me. The baby inside me shifted as if reacting to the surge of panic in my chest. My breath hitched. For a second, I forgot how to stand still. They hadn't seen me yet. I was just another guest floating through the crowd, alone, pregnant, trying to hold my dignity together in a rented navy dress and flats that barely supported my swollen feet. It was supposed to be just one quiet night. A chance to slip into the past, blend in, remind myself of who I used to be before everything fell apart. I hadn't even RSVP'd with my real name. I didn't want attention. I wanted closure. But closure has a cruel sense of timing. The hall was exactly as I remembered it, and not at all. Renovated, polished, elevated. Walls that once echoed cheap campus laughter now glowed with refined sophistication. There were photos of each graduating class framed along the corridor, and one, my class, froze me in place. In it I stood proudly in my cap and gown. And beside me, Daniel. Fresh-faced, ambitious, his hand resting on my back like we were already building something permanent. That was 12 years ago. Now, I stood alone, carrying a child he never asked about, never knew about. A life he helped create and walked away from before he even realized what he was leaving behind. A waiter passed by with flutes of sparkling cider. I grabbed one, my throat dry from panic, from memory, from the unbearable weight of being seen without being acknowledged. I told myself I didn't come here for him. But the truth? Some part of me needed to see with my own eyes that he had truly moved on. And he had, so easily, so completely. I turned away quickly, pretending to examine a painting on the wall, a student mural from the class of '99. My heart was racing so loud I swore the floor beneath me could hear it. He hadn't seen me, not yet. I had options. I could leave right now. Walk out, pretend I was never there. Slip back into the quiet cabin I now called home, rock Ethan in my arms and tell myself none of this mattered. But I didn't move. I couldn't. My feet, swollen and tired, stayed planted, and my hand found its way to my belly, resting there protectively, instinctively. What if he turned? What if he recognized me? What would I say? Hi, Daniel. Surprise, I'm carrying your child. No. That moment had passed, and I had already chosen silence. I breathed in deeply, but it didn't help. The room smelled like roses and roasted lamb and rich people's perfume, too sweet, too overwhelming. And then it happened. A woman's voice, sharp, familiar, just behind me. Susan? I turned. Professor Alvarez, my old mentor. Still elegant, still graceful, still impossibly sharp. She took one look at me and smiled, then her gaze dropped to my belly. Oh, she said gently. Congratulations, my dear. I didn't know. I didn't tell anyone, I said, trying to smile. It's complicated. Her smile didn't fade. She simply nodded and slid her arm into mine. Come on, let's find you a seat before someone makes a fuss about how radiant you look. She led me gently through the crowd. I kept my eyes low, but I could still feel the weight of the room. Alumni were laughing, hugging, exchanging business cards and stories of grandchildren. I felt like a foreigner in a land I once ruled. As we walked, I glanced up, just for a second. Daniel was watching me. Our eyes met, and for a moment, just a flicker, I saw it. Recognition, shock, and something else. Guilt, regret? He looked away before I could decide. But the moment landed like a stone in my chest. He saw me, he knew. And now the question was, what would he do next? My name is Susan Whitmore. I'm 38 years old. I used to be someone with a plan, with direction, with a neat 5-year goal written in journals I now keep hidden under my bed. Before all this, I taught literature at a small liberal arts college just outside of Seattle. My days were filled with Dickinson, Baldwin, and Morrison. My nights with course prep, quiet dinners, and laughter over wine. I lived in cardigans and lived for syllabi. I was the kind of woman who remembered birthdays, sent thank you cards, baked banana bread from scratch. And then I married Daniel. He was 5 years younger, studying computer science when we met. I was in my final year, he was just starting out, full of boyish charm, awkward jokes, and a hunger to prove himself. I first noticed him at one of my poetry readings. He sat in the back, didn't say a word, just stared like every line I spoke was made for him. A week later, he left a note outside my office. "You read Plath like you've lived it. Can I buy you coffee?" I should have said no. But I didn't. I fell in love with the boy who loved how I spoke, who listened, who said he'd never met anyone who could turn words into music. I helped him study. He taught me how to slow down. We balanced each other. He was fire, I was water. When we married 2 years later, everyone had an opinion. Too young, too rushed, too different. I didn't care. Love, I thought, was a risk worth taking. I supported him through job changes, late-night startup pitches, and burnout. I was the one steady salary while he jumped between tech ideas and founders with too much ambition. I believed in him more than he believed in himself. Until one day he didn't believe in us anymore. He came home late, told me he needed space, said we were different people now. I asked if there was someone else. He hesitated, then lied. A month later, he moved out. 2 months later, I saw her tagged in a photo with him, Leela, from his office. The just a friend I was never allowed to question. I didn't scream. I didn't chase after him. I packed his things neatly, left the key on the counter. I didn't even ask why he stopped loving me. I already knew. I had become furniture, familiar, quiet, supportive, to the point of invisibility. Then, 3 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant. At first, I laughed. Then I cried. Then I lay in the bathtub for over an hour, staring at the ceiling like it held the answers. My heart wasn't broken anymore. It was numb. But there, beneath the shock, was something else. Something fierce. Protective. I made a choice that night. I would raise this child on my own. I wouldn't tell Daniel. Not because I wanted to punish him, but because I knew the truth. He would only come back out of guilt. And guilt was not a foundation I would build my child's life on. I sold the house, closed every shared account, took a sabbatical from teaching. I packed what little was mine and moved to a quiet lakeside town 4 hours away where no one knew me as his wife. There, in a rented cabin surrounded by pine and silence, I started over. I read again, not for grading papers, just for me. I wrote poetry I never showed anyone. I drank tea on the porch in oversized sweaters and talked to my unborn baby like he was already listening. The days were slow and heavy with solitude, but not sadness. I was healing. And yet, there was always this ghost of a story I hadn't closed, a chapter left dangling. Not with him, but with me. With who I had been before I was someone's wife, someone's afterthought, someone left behind. When the university sent out invitations for the 70th anniversary gala, I almost threw it away. But something stopped me. A small voice, a quiet dare. Go back, let them see you're still here. And so I said yes, not to the past, but to the woman I used to be, before she was silenced. The grand hall had changed. That was my first thought as I walked in. 12 years ago, it was just an old auditorium with dim lights and uncomfortable wooden seats that creaked whenever someone shifted. Now it was unrecognizable. Polished marble floors, towering floral arrangements in every corner, and chandeliers that cast a golden haze over everything. It felt more like a hotel ballroom in Manhattan than a university event hall. The event was in full swing. Laughter bounced off the high ceilings. Waiters glided through the room with trays of champagne and shrimp canapes. A live jazz trio played softly in the background. Tables were dressed in navy blue satin, each centerpiece a single white orchid in a sleek glass vase, modern, minimal, expensive-looking. People moved in confident clusters, hugging, reminiscing, snapping photos. It was the kind of scene that demanded poise, presence. And here I was, 8 months pregnant, swollen, nervous, clutching my small handbag like it might anchor me to the floor. I hadn't told anyone I was coming. I didn't post about it. I didn't text old classmates. I hadn't even intended to stay long. Just a quick look around, a glimpse at the ghosts, maybe a soft exit, unnoticed. But the energy in the room had other plans. The second I stepped through those doors, I felt the weight of it. The collective gaze. No one said anything, but I caught the flickers of surprise in their eyes. The looks that went from my face, to my belly, back to my face. I took a deep breath and kept walking. I reminded myself that I belonged here. That this school, these memories, this history, it was mine too. No one could take that. I moved to the side of the room, letting the crowd flow around me. I spotted the class photo wall, each graduating class in a frame side by side. There I was, class of 2007. My smile wide, my eyes bright, and next to me Daniel, his arms slung around my shoulder, like we were already forever. I turned away. That was when I saw them. Daniel stood near the donor wall, his hand resting lightly on the small of Lila's back. She was laughing, head tilted slightly, eyes sparkling under the light. He leaned in, said something only she could hear, and she touched his arm in that familiar, practiced way couples do. They looked flawless, like a magazine cover come to life. I froze. It was one thing to imagine him happy with someone else. It was another to see it. Him smiling that easy smile, the same one he used to give me on lazy Sunday mornings when we shared coffee and silence. I watched them like a stranger, like a woman outside her own life. Lila was wearing a fitted red gown that shimmered every time she moved. Her hair was swept to one side, her posture perfect, like she'd been trained to be on display. She looked younger than me, fresher, and she had what I used to have, Daniel's attention, his arm, his protection. I wondered if she knew, about me, about the baby, about the years I spent picking up the pieces of the man she now held whole. Just then, someone bumped into me gently from behind. A man in a tuxedo, mid-conversation, didn't even look. I stumbled a bit, clutching my stomach instinctively. No apology. I steadied myself and moved to the side, trying to disappear into the wallpaper. But it was too late. Someone called my name, a voice loud, cheerful, too familiar. "Is that Susan Whitmore?" A man from our class, David, I think. Loud, always too friendly. He bounded over, grinning. "Oh, wow, you look great," he said, eyes wide as they dropped to my belly. "Pregnant? Wow, congrats. Didn't know you had a little one on the way." I smiled stiffly. "Thank you. Yes, a few more weeks." He looked around, eyes gleaming with curiosity. "You here alone?" I nodded. He opened his mouth to say something else, but by then, others had started to look. Daniel had turned, and our eyes met, again, but this time there was no room to look away. Not when the truth was standing right in front of him, round, undeniable, living. Not when the past and the present collided like this. Not when Lila was still laughing, and he had just realized the joke wasn't hers. Daniel always had a talent for making wrong things look right. He didn't yell, he didn't hit. He never cheated in ways that left lipstick stains or unanswered phone calls. He cheated in silence, in distance, in the subtle shift of affection that happened so slowly, you almost convinced yourself it was your fault. When I saw him walking toward me that night at the gala, Lila close behind, I didn't see a monster. I saw the same man who used to make me grilled cheese at midnight when I couldn't sleep. The one who kissed my forehead during long grading nights. Who once said, "You're the smartest woman I know, Susan. But love, I've learned, doesn't erase betrayal, it just makes it sting more." He approached with practiced calm. "Susan," he said, his voice lower than I remembered. "Wow, I didn't expect." I cut him off gently. "It's been a long time." He looked down, eyes flicking to my stomach. His face tightened. Yes, 8 months." Lila was standing to his left, a step behind. She had that perfectly rehearsed smile, sympathetic but condescending. "Congratulations," she said smoothly. "You look strong." It wasn't a compliment, it was a warning, an attempt to appear above suspicion, above guilt. I met her gaze, held it. "Thank you," I replied simply. "Pregnancy suits me better than deceit." Daniel shifted uncomfortably. "We didn't know you'd be here," he said. I didn't come for you." That silenced him. The three of us stood there, a triangle of unresolved timelines. Around us, conversations flowed, music played, glasses clinked. But in our bubble, there was only tension. History. And the kind of silence that screams. What hurt wasn't that he left. What hurt was how easily he replaced me. We had spent 8 years together. I helped build the foundation of the life he was now living with someone else. I funded his early ventures. I cooked through his failed startups. I held his head on nights he cried over losses. I read his code drafts when he couldn't afford a team, and when he finally struck gold with Novatech, it was her name he added to the celebration list, not mine. Not the woman who sacrificed her tenure track, her body, her time. Lila wasn't just younger, she was newer, untouched by struggle. She got the polished version of him. The one I helped shape. But maybe the worst part? She knew. Women like Lila always know. They know when a man still has ties to someone else. They know how to make space for themselves, aggressively, deliberately. I had seen the way she touched him, casual but possessive. I had seen her eyes scanning the room, measuring every woman nearby. She wasn't nervous. She was victorious, but victory built on betrayal is fragile. As they walked away, I caught a snippet of Lila's whisper. I told you she might show. So she was expecting me. That smile hadn't been surprise. It was strategy. She wanted me to see this. She wanted me to see them. And suddenly, it all made sense. The timing of the invitation, the public nature of their appearance, the way they stood under that banner like royalty. This wasn't just an alumni gala. It was a stage. And I had walked right into their performance. But what they didn't know was that I hadn't come as a spectator. I had come with a truth they couldn't control. I should have left right after that conversation. But I didn't. Some part of me, call it pride, call it defiance, refused to walk out like a ghost. I'd done that enough in my life. This time, I wanted to stay, even if it meant being uncomfortable. Even if it meant standing in a room full of memories that didn't want me back. So I stayed. Professor Alvarez found me again and ushered me to a quiet table near the back, just beside the exit. If it gets too much, you slip out that door, she whispered, squeezing my hand. You owe no one anything, I smiled, grateful. Exhausted. I sipped water, nibbled a cracker I couldn't taste. Ethan moved inside me like he was trying to comfort me, or maybe remind me he was here, this tiny heartbeat tethering me to something bigger than pain. Then the lights dimmed. The MC, some energetic alum from the class of 2012, stepped onto the stage, microphone in hand, a big grin plastered across his face. And now, he said, a moment to honor the women of Westford, alumni who've gone on to inspire, lead, and change lives. Applause rose. My hands instinctively reached for my belly, anchoring myself. I glanced around the room, clapping, smiling, unsuspecting faces. And of course, the MC continued, we welcome back a very special guest tonight. A woman whose voice once lit up our lecture halls, whose poetry moved professors to tears, and who returns to us now, stronger than ever. Susan Whitmore, class of 2007. The spotlight hit me like a slap. I blinked. Frozen. I hadn't signed up for any public mention. I hadn't registered officially. I hadn't submitted a bio or photo. Someone had done this for me, or maybe to me. People turned. Chairs shifted. Necks craned. Then came the whispers. Oh my God, she's pregnant. Isn't that Daniel's ex? She came alone? I thought she disappeared after the divorce. And then laughter. Not from everyone, just a pocket of it. Loud. Cutting. Unmistakably cruel. She's huge, someone said. A female voice, young, sharp. Daniel really upgraded, another voice added. Laughter again. This time it spread, like wildfire. My face flushed, not from embarrassment, something deeper, hotter, humiliation mixed with rage. I didn't stand. I didn't wave. I didn't give them what they wanted. But my hands shook under the table. I could feel the pity in some glances, the disgust in others. A few looked away entirely, as if my presence was somehow indecent, uninvited, unwelcome. Across the room, Daniel sat stiffly. Lila, meanwhile, smirked. She didn't clap. She didn't look surprised. She leaned in toward a friend and whispered something behind her hand. The friend laughed. It hit me then. They had set this up. They had known I was coming, they had tipped someone off, maybe added my name quietly to the program, and then waited for the perfect moment to let the crowd feast. Not because they needed to hurt me, but because they needed to erase me, publicly. I stood. Chairs shifted, conversations paused, my breath was shallow, my feet felt like they were wrapped in chains. But I walked, one step then another, toward the exit. Not rushed, not panicked, just deliberate. Every eye in the room followed. I kept my head high. Outside, the night air was cool, sharp. I let it fill my lungs, slow my pulse. I didn't cry, not yet. I found a bench beneath the old oak tree near the courtyard, the one where Daniel once kissed me after finals week. I sat slowly, hands on my belly, closed my eyes, and I felt it. The ache, the burn, the betrayal that had gone from private to public in one ruthless evening. I'm sorry, baby, I whispered. You didn't deserve that. Neither did I. Behind me, the music inside played on. But I was done dancing to their tune. That night, I didn't go back to the motel right away. I couldn't. I drove in circles for almost 2 hours, the city lights blurring through my windshield like smudged memories. The air outside was cold, but inside the car it was worse. Tight, hot, suffocating. My dress clung to me in all the wrong places, and every bump in the road made my back ache, my feet swell further, my chest tighten. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I kept one hand on the steering wheel, the other on my belly. Ethan was still, too still. My mind spun with what-ifs. What if the stress hurt him? What if something was wrong? What if this night wasn't just humiliating, but dangerous? I finally pulled into a dimly lit parking lot by the lake, cut the engine and sat there, engine ticking as it cooled, my breathing shallow, body trembling. That was when the tears came. Not the dramatic kind. Not loud, sobbing, cinematic crying. No, these tears were quieter, thicker, heavier. They came from somewhere deeper than sadness, somewhere below disappointment, below anger. A place called depletion. I laid my head on the steering wheel and cried until my breath hitched, until the guilt crept in. I had failed, not just as a wife, or a woman, or a speaker, but as a mother. I should have stayed home, protected him, protected myself. Instead, I had walked into a trap like a naive girl still clinging to some version of closure that didn't exist. Now, I wasn't just alone, I was exposed. And worse, I had let my child witness it, even from the inside. I eventually made it back to the motel just after midnight. The receptionist didn't look up. Didn't need to. I looked like a ghost in heels. I walked slowly down the hallway, each step dragging, my body screaming for rest, while my heart screamed for silence. Room 214. I fumbled with the keycard, my fingers were numb. When the door finally clicked open, I stepped in and locked it behind me like I was trying to shut out the world. I didn't bother turning on the lights. I sat on the edge of the bed, still in my dress, and stared at nothing. My body was still, but my mind raced. Replayed every laugh, every whisper, every smug look from Lila. Every time Daniel looked away, I had been erased. Again, but this time, in front of everyone. I pressed a hand to my stomach. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I should have never taken you there. I should have protected you better." And then, sharp pain. It wasn't blinding, but it was sudden, deep, like something twisting. I gasped and stood up too fast. Another jolt. Panic surged through me like electricity. I paced the room, hand under my belly, trying to breathe, trying not to cry harder. I drank water, sat down, stood up, breathed again. After 10 minutes, the pain faded. But the fear stayed. I lay down slowly, curled on my side, cradling the only person who hadn't judged me that night. "You're okay," I whispered. "We're okay, you hear me?" The room was silent, but something had shifted. I wasn't crying anymore. I was listening. And beneath the pain, beneath the fear, I heard something I hadn't felt in weeks. Resolve. Not loud, not ready, but it was there, waiting. The next morning, the world was still gray, but my mind wasn't. I sat by the motel window, wrapped in a thin blanket, one hand cupped around a steaming mug of chamomile tea, the other resting on my belly. Ethan stirred lightly. No pain, no panic, just presence. Then my phone vibrated, a number I didn't recognize. I hesitated, then answered. "Susan, it's Marcus." His voice pulled me back years. Marcus Bennett, Daniel's former co-founder, the guy who used to crash on our couch during Novatech's early days. He disappeared from our lives the moment things got serious between Daniel and Lila. "Sorry to call out of the blue," he said, tone cautious. "But I think you should know. There's something going on with Novatech." I didn't respond. He continued. "There's a quiet investigation. Financial discrepancies. Some filings were flagged during a routine investor audit, but here's the part that matters to you. Your name is still on the original ownership documents, and you might be liable, or entitled." My breath caught. "I thought Daniel removed me," I said slowly. "I never signed anything, but I assumed." "You assumed wrong," Marcus replied. "Your name is still there, legally. On equity agreements, seed funding logs, some even show you as the primary founder." "What?" My voice was barely a whisper. He lowered his voice. "I'm sending you documents, emails, contracts, everything I could pull before things get locked down. You have more power than you think." I sat frozen, not because of the potential scandal, but because a part of me, the part that had been erased, silenced, minimized, was suddenly real again. I wasn't just Daniel's ex-wife. I was a legal stakeholder in his empire. I spent the next 3 hours reading. Marcus had emailed over 30 attachments, PDFs, scanned contracts, forwarded messages, financial breakdowns. There it was, my signature, on the very first seed funding document. Back then, I had cashed out part of my retirement savings to support Daniel's vision. "This is our future," he had said, kissing my hand. "You'll see." I saw the future, just not the one he promised. And now I saw the fraud, too. He hadn't just left me. He had used me. Used my name, my money, my reputation, then wiped me from the narrative. Publicly presented Novatech as his and Lila's success story, but behind the scenes, my name still carried legal weight. The silence I had protected him with was now my greatest weapon. I picked up the phone and called Claire, an old friend from grad school, now a corporate attorney in New York. We hadn't spoken in years, but she answered after 2 rings. "Claire," I said, "I need help and I need you to keep this quiet, for now." "Tell me everything," she said, no hesitation. By that evening, Claire had reviewed the documents and confirmed it. I had legal standing. Daniel had failed to file the dissolution paperwork. I was entitled to at least 27% of Novatech's current valuation. That number made me dizzy. But more than the money was the power. "I can draft a cease and desist," Claire said. "File an injunction. We could force a financial freeze if needed." "No," I said, "not yet." "Why not?" "Because I don't want to scare him," I said slowly. "I want him to see me first. Really see me." She paused. "You're not doing this out of spite, are you?" "No," I said. "I was doing it for Ethan, for the woman I used to be, for every part of myself that Daniel tried to erase. And this time, I wouldn't just return, I'd reclaim." The first thing I did was cut my hair. It sounds small, almost cliché, but when I sat in that chair, staring into the mirror at the woman who had survived a betrayal, a public humiliation, and a near breakdown, cutting my hair felt like shedding a skin. The stylist looked hesitant. "Are you sure?" I nodded. "Cut it short, fresh, clean, like I mean business." And I did. Over the next week, I didn't just recover, I rebuilt. Claire helped me set up a holding company in my name, transferring my shares into a new entity. Legally, financially, symbolically, I was standing on my own. I met with a discreet PR consultant in the city. We drafted a narrative, one not yet made public. Founding woman behind Novatech breaks silence after years of erasure. We didn't publish it, not yet, but we prepared. Then I had new photos taken, not glamour shots, real portraits. Me in a structured blazer, holding my belly proudly, eyes direct. No shame, no softness, just power and poise. The photo we picked showed me seated in profile, hands folded gently on my bump. A caption underlined the image: vision, sacrifice, legacy. I smiled when I saw it, because for the first time in years, I recognized myself. Physically, I was heavier, slower. I couldn't wear heels or move quickly. But none of that mattered, because my mind was faster than ever. I started writing again. Not just journaling, but drafting my side of the story. Every line was truth filtered through strength. I wasn't writing to be heard. I was writing to remember, to reclaim. Ethan kept me grounded. Each time he kicked, I smiled, not with fear, but with clarity. This wasn't just my fight anymore. This was our beginning. And I would build a world where he knew his mother didn't fold when life tried to erase her. The change didn't happen overnight. But it did happen. My back straightened. My voice firmed. My presence shifted. Even the way I walked into a room changed. I visited my old college campus again, quietly, during the week. Professor Alvarez met me with open arms and tears in her eyes. She asked if I was ready to speak publicly. "Not yet," I said, "but soon." That evening she handed me something I didn't expect. A letter. Handwritten, old, from Daniel. Dated years ago. "Found it in my desk," she said. "He asked me to deliver it once. I never did. I guess I didn't trust his timing." The letter was brief, rambling, unfinished. He had thanked me, apologized, said he wasn't ready to be the man I needed. I didn't cry, not this time, because now I was the woman I needed, and she was more powerful than he'd ever imagined. The legal letter arrived on a crisp Tuesday morning. I didn't need to see his reaction to know what was happening. It felt like a chess move, quiet, calculated, and inevitable. My lawyers had done more than just draft a notice. They had built a case. Evidence meticulously compiled, seed funding documents, equity transfers, investor agreements, every legal foothold Daniel had used to erase me, they had undone. In bold letters at the top, notice of legal action, fraud, financial misrepresentation, and violation of co-founder rights. It was polite, matter of fact, devastating. I sent copies to the board of Novatech with a precise cover note, for formal review. Susan Whitmore, original co-founder, still holding 27% equity as of founding. Then came the call for an emergency board meeting. When the invite came, I stared at it. 8.5 months pregnant, exhausted, emotionally wrung out. But I didn't ignore it, because I had a right to be there. On the day of the meeting, I arrived in a crisp cream-colored suit, heels flat, hair sleek. My lawyer walked in with me. I saw Lila in the corner, her eyes wide, not in surprise, but in calculation. Daniel looked pale, his edge gone. The meeting room was cold glass and chrome, business casual filtered with tension. I took my seat. Introductions made without fanfare. Miss Whitmore, thank you for joining. I opened my binder. Slide by slide, page by page, truth laid bare. The early contracts carrying my signature. Funding streams traced back to my bank account. Investor emails crediting me as a co-founder. My voice remained steady as I spoke, though my heart pounded. Novatech was built on shared vision. My name is not just in legal documents, but etched in the foundation. You omitted me from public history, but history is not always what you see. Silence. Then board members leaned forward, multiple requests for clarification. Facts couldn't be ignored. Daniel tried to explain, to say there had been misunderstandings. He said he thought I'd been removed, that he didn't realize. A board member interrupted. But no paperwork says you were removed. Lila's composure cracked. Someone behind me whispered how she gulped. In under an hour, the vote was called. Daniel was suspended pending investigation, access revoked. An external audit was commissioned, and to my quiet astonishment, they invited me to join as an interim board advisor, my seat restored officially. It wasn't theatrical, no gavel fell, but it was justice. I didn't cheer, I didn't smile, but inside I felt it, a silent, crystallized peace, the kind you don't announce, but you know is there. Walking out, Daniel confronted me in the hallway. His eyes looked lost. Susan, he said quietly. I turned. I was wrong, he said. All this time. I listened, but didn't speak. Because what mattered wasn't him. It was the baby in my arms now. I pressed a hand gently to my belly. I'm not doing this to punish. I'm doing this to protect. He nodded, a glimmer of regret on his face. Later that day, the interim board advisor badge felt heavy around my neck. I met with the audit team, answered questions, read their terms. My stomach fluttered, not with fear, but with purpose. By evening, I was home, still 8.5 months pregnant, still cautious with every step, but profoundly changed. I placed my hand on Ethan's nursery door. He will grow up knowing I didn't vanish, that his mother fought, silently, with integrity. That night, Marissa texted, "Today, you didn't just win, you reintroduced yourself." I typed back, "For him." And I believed it. Ethan arrived on a quiet Thursday morning, rain gently tapping the hospital window, the world outside softly gray, but inside my arms, everything changed. I held him, skin to skin, new scent of baby, warm, raw, and urgent. His cry rang through my heart, dissolving months of fear, pain, and uncertainty. He was here. Alive. Mine. I looked at him and whispered, "You are safe now, baby. We've already survived so much." I glanced at the time. 2 weeks had passed since that board meeting. Since I stood in a glass tower and reclaimed not just equity but identity. Walking those sterile hospital halls, I felt grounded, whole. The betrayal, the humiliations, they existed, but they were no longer me. The nurses were kind, but I was ready to leave it all behind. I texted Marissa as soon as we left the hospital. "Ethan is finally here. We're okay." Her reply came in an instant. "He's perfect, and so are you." At home, I sat on my bed with Ethan in my arms. Professor Alvarez visited first, bringing flowers and a sorrowful smile. She sat beside me and whispered, "He'll know how much you fought for him, and so will the world." I nodded, tears in my eyes. Not sadness, but something deeper. Fulfillment. I didn't know what the next chapter would hold. Full-time teaching again, restoring the foundation board role, writing a book, maybe speaking more publicly. But for the first time, the unknown didn't intimidate me. That evening, I took one of the portraits from the photo shoot, the one annotated, "Vision, Sacrifice, Legacy." I pinned it above Ethan's crib. A quiet reminder that the future we are building is deeply rooted in survival, strength, and truth. 3 months later, I stood on stage again, this time not as a guest or a former professor, but as a speaker. The venue, a women's leadership summit hosted by the very foundation that had reached out to me in Part 8. The theme, From Silence to Voice, Resilience in the Face of Betrayal. Ethan watched from the front row in his dad's arms, safe, curious, unburdened. I spoke of truth, of justice, of the silent battles women fight every day, about how betrayal isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a void, or a look that passes you by. But survival, true survival, is louder. I told the audience, if you're watching this because you're wondering whether you're strong enough to survive your past, yes you are. Because surviving isn't the end, it's the start of something new. Women in the audience stood up after. Some cried, some hugged, many whispered thank you. One woman, eyes red but resolute, told me, I was ready to give up. But now I think I just need to start over. I held her hand and whispered, starting over isn't weakness, it's the strongest thing you can do. When I left the stage, I found Ethan surrounded by his village, Marissa, Professor Alvarez, Claire, and the foundation director. I picked him up, cradled him close, stepping into the light not as a victim but as someone who rose. My final thought before the scene ended. This is who I am now. A mother, a survivor, a woman who chose herself. And sometimes, that's the greatest revolution of all.